Bengals training camp is just a few weeks away, which means it's time to take an in-depth look at the offense. What are their biggest weaknesses? Where are they deepest? And are there any concerns for Joe Burrow and company? Let's get into it right here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Hi again, everyone, and welcome in to CBT. I'm James Rapine of allbengals.com. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and buckle up because training camp just a few weeks away, and we are going to have you covered, whether it's hearing from Mike Brown or any of the Bengals front office members that talk before the start of the season. Duke Tobin, you'll hear from Zach Taylor, certainly, or all of our training camp coverage. You have to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you get all of it in one place. Today's video is brought to you by Rivertown Inkery, rivertowninkery.com. You see, I'm wearing the Rivertown Inkery swag today, and it is the most comfortable shirt, most comfortable gear that you can get. So check them out right now. 2 locations, Findlay Market, Oakley, or at rivertowninkery.com. And let's get into this offense, because the Bengals offense, to me, is as deep as they've been at any moment really for the past 8 years or so. I think they were really, really deep in 2015. And you could make the argument then, and obviously they started 8-0. Quarterbacks were different. Offensive weapons were different. Not many players, if any. I'm trying to think if there are any that were still on that 2015 roster. But the point is a lot of new faces, but there are some some similarities between that team and this 2023 Bengals team. But I think that this is the deepest. I believe that. Let's start at quarterback, because obviously Joe Burrow, to me, is on pace to go down as the best quarterback in franchise history, in a franchise that over its 56 seasons, I've done an in-depth look with Enter the Jungle, the book that I've written. You can get it at CincinnatiBengalsBook.com, pre-order today. But Ken Anderson, Boomer Esiason, this isn't some new thing of the Bengals finding a quarterback. They've had good quarterbacks, great quarterbacks. Carson Palmer, Andy Dalton. Joe Burrow is the latest, and I think he can be the greatest. And so looking at that room, I think Trevor Siemian clearly ahead of Jake Browning, but you feel pretty good about the Bengals quarterback situation, and a lot of that obviously has to do with Joe Burrow. We talk about Joe Burrow a lot, so let's keep it moving here and go from Joe Burrow to the men who protect Joe Burrow. And I think that's the biggest difference between this team and past Bengals teams, certainly in the Joe Burrow era, and really dating back to 2015. That's a big reason why I mention it, is this offensive line is deep. We can debate La'el Collins, Jonah Williams, Jackson Carman, and I know we have. We can debate that all we want. But when I look at this Bengals team and this Bengals offense specifically, the offensive line room is as deep as it's been, and I expect big things from them, whether it's adding Orlando Brown Jr., whether it's Cordell Volson now starting for a second straight year, playing the most snaps in that offensive line room as a rookie. A 4th-round rookie out of North Dakota State plays the most snaps in the offensive line room. I think Cordell is going to take a big step forward this year. Ted Karras, obviously, someone we've partnered with and is a big part of the Bengals and what they've done and were able to do last year and what they'll continue to do, in my opinion, this year. And then Alex Kappa. He was their best lineman last year, if you ask me. And him getting injured against the Ravens really, really hurt Cincinnati in the postseason. And then obviously you have a guy in, I think it's going to be Jonah Williams, but we could debate it. And the reason the debate is interesting is now the Bengals have Orlando Brown Jr., obviously starting at left tackle. But if anything happens to him, let's say he gets nicked up mid-game, Jonah Williams can play left tackle. So if Jonah's on the roster, he can play left tackle. You have La'el Collins, Jackson Carman, and Jonah Williams battling for that right tackle spot. They're deep because if in a pinch, we know Jackson Carman can play left tackle as well. He did it last year. We know that he could slide in and play both guard spots. And I think that's what's interesting, is there's so much versatility in this offensive line room. They re-signed Max Sharping, who I like on the interior. They were able to keep specific guys that have played on this team for a while. Akeem Adeniji, say what you want, but he's played valuable snaps. I'm not saying he's not flawed. He's played valuable snaps. So if that's like your 8th or 9th lineman and you bring in Cody Ford, who's played guard and the Bengals view him as a tackle right now, has that inside-outside type of flex, there's just a lot of dudes in that offensive line room. And so I'm not going to debate what's going to happen at right tackle in this video, but from a depth standpoint, I feel really good about where they're at. A guy like Jackson Kirkland, I'm not sure there's an open spot for him, but he's an interior lineman that I like, undrafted rookie. Ben Brown last year was an undrafted rookie, got injured, but could he push Trey Hill at center? I think that they have some dudes, and there's going to be some good linemen in that room that either end up on the practice squad or end up elsewhere. And this is probably the first year that we're having this conversation. Think about it last year. It was, all right, Jackson Carman probably going to start at left guard, and if he doesn't, it's going to be Cordell Volson. And that was kind of it. And there was no real depth behind those guys. Those were the two options. At right tackle, I just named 3 guys. And I think it starts with Jonah and then Lal and goes from there. But these guys can play multiple spots, and I think that's the beauty of the offensive line. I expect the offensive line to be much, much better this season. Let's go from offensive line to wide receiver. And wide receiver cost the Bengals last year. There's no doubt about it. When you are so reliant on 11 personnel and 3 wide receivers, 1 running back, 1 tight end, and you're going to play 3 wide receiver sets, well, that means that third receiver is just as valuable as that first one. And so Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, if any 3 of those guys went down last year, there was a significant drop-off. And while I think there's still a drop-off, I think they're deeper at wide receiver. Adding a guy like Charlie Jones just changes everything. It does. And Trenton Irwin made big plays. And so now you still have Trenton Irwin, who is probably as confident as he's ever been in his NFL career that he can make plays on the field. And you get a guy in Charlie Jones who is productive at Purdue, who's an older player that is working extremely hard and raises the floor of that wide receiver room if a guy like Tyler Boyd goes down like he did in the AFC Championship game. Obviously, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase have missed time as well. The Bengals are so reliant on 3 receivers. They needed to get deeper here. And while they didn't add necessarily proven talent, I think they got about as close to it as they could. In a draft class that lacked weapons, the Bengals have at least found 1, and I think might have found 2, because Andre Yosavash is someone I expect to push for a roster spot as well. And not only just make a roster spot, but he's really athletic. I think he's impressed with his work ethic. And there's a chance now, and it would have to be a disaster where someone gets hurt, but there's a chance that he's ready to contribute this year. Hopefully we don't see him much on offense this year because the big 3 stay healthy, but the Bengals are deeper in that room. Obviously, you still have Stanley Morgan Jr., you have Kwame Lassiter, guys that you've certainly seen. I like that they were able to add to that room. Shedrick Jackson, certainly someone to pay attention to just because he runs 4.227, I believe he ran, sub 4.3, so he can fly. He's a burner. Someone we'll certainly keep an eye on during camp. So overall, I feel much better about the Bengals wide receiver depth, and Charlie Jones is a big reason why. You pair him with a guy like Trenton Irwin coming off the bench, and you feel pretty good, at least, about where they're at. And let's go from a place where they have a lot of depth to a place where they don't have a lot of depth, and it's tight end. And this was one of those spots where we spent a lot of time pre-draft talking about tight ends. It didn't fall their way. I don't blame them for not taking a tight end. It just didn't work. They were in on the tight end, and I tried to tell as many as I could without putting it out there too obvious that they weren't going to take Michael Mayer with that 28th pick. I think some will question that, and we'll see if that pays off or not. But just looking at this Bengals tight end room, you're really banking on Irv Smith to stay healthy. Now, they're not overly relying on tight end, and I think they would survive if he doesn't stay healthy, and he hasn't in recent years, or if he doesn't fill in for Hayden Hurst and play that role, just because they are more reliant on 3 wide receivers. I don't think it's a huge position, value position for this Bengals offense. But, man, after Irv Smith, it gets really, really questionable. You got Drew Sample, who's obviously more of a primarily a blocking tight end. Someone that I like. You get him on a 1-year deal. I think you feel pretty good. Like, if Irv Smith and Drew Sample stay healthy, you feel great about the tight end room. it's more of a health thing in the guys behind him where it's like, all right, well, injuries happen to everybody in football, especially to the tight end position. And just looking at the tight ends after him, Devin Asiasi, second year here, we'll see Tanner Hudson. I do like Tanner Hudson, and I thought he was a sneaky addition last year, won a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay, certainly someone that could push, I think, certainly practice squad. I think that's pretty much guaranteed if he doesn't get claimed by a team. But I think he could push Devin Asiasi for that third tight end spot. And then Nick Bowers and Christian Trahan. Trahan faces a really uphill battle out of the University of Houston to make the roster. We'll see on Nick Bowers as well. And so the other spot, and that's, I guess, the biggest concern, but there aren't many concerns with this offense. And then the other one is running back. And this isn't a Joe Mixon money conversation. This is more of a who replaces Samaje Perine conversation. I think that's the interesting question going into training camp right now with this running back room. Look, if you have Mixon, Chase Brown, Travion Williams, I feel really good about that trio from a running back standpoint, strictly running, pass catching standpoint, feel good about that. Who's the pass blocker? Is it Chris Evans? Could he sneak in that role? Because I think he's the best receiving back out of the entire group. And he's kind of gone under the radar for a bit, but he's got the explosion. He's got the hands, all of those things you look for, the route running ability. But can he pass protect? Because if so, I think he could go from the doghouse last year, and that's where he was at the end of the year, to not only making this roster, but pushing for playing time. I think that's the spot. If you're Chase Brown, Travion Williams, obviously Mixon's going to get snaps, assuming he's on the roster, and I expect him to be. And Chase Brown, Chris Evans, did I miss anyone? Travion Williams. If you want to get on the field, it's all about pass protection because the Bengals need that Samaje Perine replacement, and maybe he's on the roster, maybe he's not. They did sign Calvin Tyler Jr. and Jacob Salyers, I don't expect either one of those guys to make the roster. Certainly don't expect them to push for that pass blocking role. I think it's hard enough for a guy like Chase Brown, but explosive runner. He's a really intelligent player. Maybe he can. And if he can, that would be great because I think a 1-2 of Joe Mixon and Chase Brown is pretty electric. It's a pretty good 1-2 punch. And you have the veteran savviness of Mixon. Obviously, he would probably get the bulk of the carries, but Brown's more explosive, great runner, and has been working on his hands in pass protection. So we'll see there. So biggest question marks on this offense, there aren't many. Who will start at right tackle, but the depth behind whoever does start, you feel pretty good about. The best we felt going into camp in quite some time. It's pass blocking running back, depth at tight end. It's pretty much it for me. Could they add another interior lineman, maybe another center? Maybe, but I think they like Trey Hill as well behind Ted Karras. So overall, I like the Bengals' depth. I think they feel good about it. On offense, they've upgraded in key areas, the offensive line, wide receiver room, two things that bit them at the end of last year. So we will see. But overall, I feel really good about this room. Training camp is just a few weeks away. So please hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and a defensive preview breaking down the depth, which I think the Bengals are even more deep on defense than they are offense. We will do that in a video coming up as well right here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. So hit that subscribe button, ring the bell. And for Andrew Fox Miller, I'm James Rapien, signing off for now on CBT, Cincinnati Bengals Talk.